So, I've got a pretty interesting camera showdown for you today. Here, I've got the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, which is arguably the best Android smartphone so far this year, going up against its predecessor, the Galaxy S20 Ultra from last year. The whole point of this video will be to see the camera improvements made onto the Galaxy S21 Ultra, and at the same time, I have a theory about the Samsung S20 Ultra to prove. Since this is a highly scientific test, I'm going to throw in the Galaxy S21 Plus as a control for this whole test. And before we start, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you're notified whenever I make an upload. Cheers. Before anything else, I should mention that all three phones in this test were up to date, camera lenses were cleaned, zero edits were made in post, and I just let the cameras do their work with as minimal input as possible, just pointing and shooting like an average user would. Samsung this year have been more intentional with the camera design on the S21 Ultra compared to the hideous atrocity from the S20 Ultra. They've retained the 108 megapixel wide camera but coupled it with a new different sensor. They've completely redone the approach to the periscope zoom and telephoto lens, and even ditched the time of flight sensor for laser autofocus, and I'd say these intentional changes translate to the images in one way or another. In ultra-wide shots that have a ton of objects in frame, both phones do a good job capturing the details of the scene and bringing out objects that stand out. However, I noticed this foggy, misty look on photo samples from the S20 Ultra, and that just ruined how images were perceived. And no, this isn't from a smudged camera lens. In fact, as you shall see shortly, this is quite a constant issue with the S20 Ultra across all lenses. Throw the S21 Plus into the mix, and first thing you notice is how the S21 Plus offers a wider field of view in ultra-wide compared to the S20 and S21 Ultra. Furthermore, you can clearly see how both the S21 Ultra and the S21 Plus nail dynamic range consistently as seen from the clouds and the sky. Contrast and color are spot on each time. The S20 Ultra, not so much. It was a hit or miss from time to time and pretty unpredictable. However, when it did find its footing, it did take some stellar shots. As this test got more and more diverse, I noticed how the S20 Ultra image fogging can be solved by taking pictures indoors in balanced lighting, or giving the camera more time to focus on an object or scene, or taking shots that have bulk of the objects in the foreground or in the middle ground like in these photos. Oh, and I love the lens flare in this shot, but somehow it wasn't there on the S21 Plus. Wide-angle shots are pleasing to look at. Colors are accurate, clarity is nothing short of amazing, and dynamic range is epic. For the most part, the S21 Ultra and S21 Plus maintain their consistency in wide-angle shots, while you notice a slight shift in dynamic range for objects in the background for the S20 Ultra. Put a human subject in frame and results hold up. The same. Images from the S21 Ultra and the S21 Plus look similar compared to those on the S20 Ultra, and all this is attributed to dynamic range disparities we've talked about. Let's talk telephoto, because this is where some massive changes have been made by Samsung. In the S20 Ultra, we have a 48 megapixel periscope telephoto lens that can do 4x and 10x zoom. Previously, what we saw from that lens was sharp, mind-blowing images at 4x and 10x, and some flimsy, hit or miss, and certain grainy images anywhere between 4x and 10x. That's because the phone in those focal points was hunting, rather guessing how to crop into the image digitally to produce an image. On the S21 Ultra, we have two telephoto lenses that seem to have worked this issue out. We have the 10 megapixel periscope telephoto lens with up to 10x optical zoom, and another separate 10 megapixel 3x optical zoom lens. After a couple of software updates on the S20 Ultra and the new dual telephoto design, I'm pleased to announce that Samsung have found the sweet spot for telephoto pictures. They look great, especially when zooming in towards human subjects with this nice background blur coming in with proper edge mapping that keeps the objects natural, colors accurate, and clarity top-notch. The S21 Plus does manage to keep up, even though its telephoto lens supports 1.1x optical zoom and 10x digital zoom. Frankly speaking, I'm impressed so far. Fascinating stuff. That's then a perfect segue to the zoom test on our contenders today. This year, we see the introduction of zoom locking on the S21 lineup. Here, the S21 Plus and the S21 Ultra have it, but it never came even as an update for the S20 Ultra. As a result, locking onto one object that's far away when zooming in on the S20 Ultra can be quite cumbersome. That's because any slight movement shifts the focus. Friendly advice: if you want to get the best, most consistent zoom shots, use a tripod. It makes your shots that much more consistent all through. Bottom line, I love how these phones can get you miles closer to an object without you having to move in on it. Question is, are you the type of person to use 100x zoom all the time or often? Or are you the type of person to use it once in a while to creep up on people or show off or just have fun? By the way, if you're enjoying this video so far and would like to see more like this, a sub to the channel would be ultra. Let's talk about portrait shots. We got higher blood density in the S21 Ultra and S21 Plus compared to the S20 Ultra, even though they're both set to level 5. The subject in frame is kept natural, that's for sure, but the S21 Ultra suffered from this glitch that made one dreadlock see-through, and that was quite interesting. Basically, it's the phone trying all it can to map out the edges of the subject properly, but trips and spills the blur all over her dreadlock. All the same, I'm pleased with how blur and object mapping stayed natural and how all phones are able to detect the subject's face even when they're wearing a mask. Previously, I experienced some difficulty with the A51 and A31 cameras detecting faces in portrait mode when someone had a mask. I'm glad Samsung has found a fix for it here. Before I forget, here are 108 megapixel mode samples from both phones. This is basically where everything is turned up and the phones use every ounce of that 108 megapixel lens to take photos. The upside: image quality is superb, epic, sharp, detailed to say the least, and the downside is maybe huge file size or the occasional stutter and lengthy image processing time. First is to mention that these here pics were taken with all phones on a tripod, and all phones support night mode from different focal perspectives. I also noted how these phones will automatically take a nighttime shot when the scene optimizer senses it's dark outside, but minimize exposure time. When you switch to night mode, the phones maximize exposure as long as needed to get the best shot. Shots with a lot going on in the scene are noisy and grainy in some areas, but put a distinct subject in frame and you do get some decent results. Both phones can shoot some great video and are capable of 8K video recording. The S21 Ultra edges out on the S20 Ultra since it can do 8K Pro video in 21:9 and sees the introduction of director's view. The S20 Ultra really struggles in video at times. This one time I was doing a 4K 60 frames per second shot and the phone literally just shut down the camera app mid-recording. Another time the camera app froze mid-recording and I couldn't stop the recording or even leave the app or use a different video recording mode. It also struggles a lot with exposure settings, meaning I had to tinker around with exposure, color balance, and at times focus locking to bring out the detail of some video samples.
What's up guys, Lord Hezan here, back again with another video, and today we're having a look at this, the Infinix Note 8i. What's up guys, Lord Hezan here, back again with another video, and today we're talking about the Infinix Note 8i.
Let's move on to the selfies, and this one should be quite easy, yeah? Well, it's not. Both the Galaxy S21 Ultra and the Galaxy S20 Ultra use a similar 40 megapixel f2.2 wide-angle selfie camera, but the images churned out are for the most part miles apart. This is a wide sample, and this is an ultra-wide selfie sample. The S20 Ultra completely flopped. I remember when taking the selfie, thinking that this is an isolated miss on the phone's part, but switched back and forth a couple of times and the results stayed the same. However, when it did work as intended, it did produce some good shots that matched those on the S21 Ultra and S21 Plus. Portrait shots on these phones are great. There's accurate edge mapping, and the bokeh effect in pictures give them a natural look and feel. And of course, with Samsung, you do have the option to play around with the background blur in post if you wanted to. So what's my theory here? Well, I'd say Samsung used the Galaxy S20 Ultra to test these waters of next level photography. They did this by cramming all the big numbers into the S20 Ultra's camera to get people talking about it, but failed to deliver in the real world experience. Today, I'm pleased to say that in one way or another, Samsung has managed to iron out the bulk of the issues the S20 Ultra had via software updates and completely changed the approach to camera tech with the S21 Ultra. Take for example autofocus issues that plagued the S20 Ultra. Those have been fixed via software updates, and the S21 Ultra straight up nails autofocus with that new laser autofocus feature. Remember how 100x zoom felt gimmicky and out of place in the S20 Ultra? Well, on the S21 Ultra, Samsung have redone it from the ground up and it feels much more intentional now. From the design, to how you traverse the focal length, to zoom locking, to how the phone suggests what mode you should use to take a photo, everything just feels a bit more refined. Basically, they took what they learned from the S20 Ultra success and failures, worked on them and improved them before they put them into the S21 Ultra. In that regard, I also think the S20 Ultra hasn't aged that well over time. Don't get me wrong, it does function like a flagship camera would, but it's the little places where it slips or falters that really matter and make it feel like it's been left behind. How the S20 Ultra can't handle a ton of directional light and ends up washing out the images, or how the S20 Ultra gets really hot, hotter than the S21 Ultra or S21 Plus for that matter, after taking just 10 minutes of 4K 60 frames per second video. All that just shows how far the S20 Ultra has come and how far it has to go. As for which one you should pick between the two, go for the S21 Ultra if money isn't a problem for you. Hands down, it's the better of the two. Or if you want flagship performance that's just as equal minus the overkill, pick up the S21 Plus. And by the way, I've got a full long-term review of the S21 Plus coming up soon, so please subscribe for that. You can't go for the S20 Ultra, get it for cheap, and still get a flagship level camera, but hold out your expectations and give Samsung more time to refine this camera, as it's just not there yet. That's been it. This is Lord Hezyon. Thanks a ton for watching. It'd make my day if you subscribed, liked and shared this video with your friends. It took quite a while to put together. See you in the next one pretty soon. Cheers.